Hi again, this is Professor Innes, and we are now on our fifth module, and we are also at the end of our discussion, our analysis of moral theory, and the consideration that moral theory is not as clear and unproblematic as people might think. So this week we have the video or the consideration here of sorry, I just have to shut the door. We have the consideration here of J.S. Mill's consequentialism. This is often referred to as utilitarianism, but I call it consequentialism to make it obvious that we are dealing with a theory which is contrary to Kant's theory. So with Kant, it is the consideration that we must conduct ourselves morally with the view that the act itself is of great importance or greater importance than the consequences. So telling a lie to bring about a greater good is no good argument, because the lie itself is something we should avoid. Whereas with consequentialism, telling lies, if it brings about a greater good and therefore diminishes pain and brings along pleasure, then yes, we should consider telling that lie. So an example might be somebody asking how they look today. Do you just tell them the truth and tell them they look terrible? Or do you say, oh, they look fine, or they look fine to you, or whatever? So in that respect, therefore, telling that lie for consequentialism is something which would be considered as possibly good, therefore acceptable. So with utilitarianism, we therefore have that consideration that we are aiming towards seeing a moral good in regards to the outcome. So we keep that in mind as far as J.S. Mill is concerned. So with J.S. Mill, we might consider him to be a bit of a motivist. So remember discussing David Hume's emotivism and his view that there's no objective moral argument or set of criteria for saying that we should carry out an act in a certain way. J.S. Mill has that argument as well, and he does say here that moral good is often based upon where you live. And he does recognize through history that moral outlooks do change rapidly. And it indicates to us here that maybe that there's no set moral argument. So therefore, we look at morals as being not really that objective, and in accordance with that, therefore, there's a lot of flexibility. And he even termed those people who, or arguments, I should say, arguments put forward as being morally objective, therefore universal, as suffering from that universal illusion. Which is a thought to get us thinking, and think to ourselves here that, there is no such thing as this universal out there. It is very much related to the circumstances we're in and the people we're in. So therefore, consequences are of great importance when thinking about moral decision making. So with that, definitely consider David Hume as something to focus our attention on J.S. Mill's consequentialism. So keep all this in mind. But with J.S. Mill, I think there's a bit in the text saying here that J.S. Mill was influenced by Bentham. Now, Bentham either was very crude in his consequentialism, therefore it didn't matter how we got to the good, so therefore pleasure could be gained from, playing on slot machines at the casino and drinking beer, and that was going to arrive at pleasure, then with crude utilitarianism, then that's fair enough. Just do that. Don't worry about going to the opera or reading good literature. That's a waste of time, and you can get to pleasure quickly. Now, with J.S. Mill, he says that Bentham either didn't think like this, or he was gracefully saying, right, we need to change utilitarianism to include a lot of aesthetics. By aesthetics, I mean here we see the act itself, therefore the means leading towards it as important not as important, but important when making moral decisions. Still, it's the consequences which are important, but we take into account here that, if it is the case that pleasure is brought about by either drinking beer and going to the casino or the opera, then we look at the two, and J.S. Mill would say that the opera is a superior pleasure than that of going to the casino and drinking beer and playing on the slot machines. Now, this, again, sounds a bit contradictory. It sounds very subjective. How do we say this? But nonetheless, he said this, and it is the case that the argument is that the opera is a superior pleasure than that of slot machines and drinking beer. But that's the argument. And again, you can write down a cautionary tale within your analysis and say, this is problematic. How do we come up with this reckoning that one pleasure is superior to another? It could be just based upon our surroundings that we say this is the case. Our peer group, it's got nothing to do with some objectivity here. So yeah, do take that into account within your critique, because we can critique J.S. Mill. Again, he's held in high regard within the philosophical world when talking about social and political philosophy, and specifically with ethics. But you can be critical, so do be critical. You may come along and say Kant has got it right, we need to concentrate on the means, and this ends consideration is of little importance to us. We might say that rights are far more important than what J.S. Mill has put forward, because J.S. Mill does reject the notion of rights and sees them as being too metaphysically out of touch or too metaphysically out of our grasp to actually gain these rights. So therefore, they're so intangible they might as well not exist, unless if they do exist. So again, you might come along here and take some other philosophical thoughts and critique J.S. Mill, which is what you're supposed to do in philosophy. Even though you might think this is a really good argument, I really like J.S. Mill, and I'm going to read some more of him, but still, be critical if you can. Okay, so I think that will do for now. So let me know if you need anything, if there are any problems with the module. I haven't seen any problems so far. Occasionally something is not released as it should be, but that's quickly resolved. I can just go on a computer and sort it out. But do let me know, and keep up the good work. I'm receiving nice long answers, good analysis, good quality work, so keep it up, please. It's nice to read, and you get the benefits as well, obviously. Okay, right, speak to you soon. Bye-bye.